My opponent claims that the death penalty fails to benefit the state of California. My response to his claim is that the death penalty has the potential to benefit the state of California. His three claims are that it costs a lot more to send people to death row than it is to send people to jail for life. The death penalty does not prevent people from committing crimes, and California's death row policy takes a lot of time, and that causes many convicts to die of other causes while on death row. His first claim is that it costs a lot more money to send people to death row than it is to send people to jail for life. The cost to send people to death row could potentially be the same as people in life imprisonment. According to Gary D. Beatty, a Florida assistant state attorney, if the multiple layers of appeal are pursued in an ethical and fiscal responsible manner, execution is less costly than warehousing a murderer for life. Most of the entities that are involved with capital cases, like the cost for prosecuting and defense attorneys, interpreters, expert witnesses, court report psychiatrists, secretaries, and court consultants, are also needed in non-capital cases. Not to mention, with more capital cases, more jobs are available to people, which brings money to California. My opponent's second claim is that the death penalty does not prevent people from committing crimes. On the other hand, the death penalty actually creates another form of crime deterrent. George E. Pataki, governor of New York in 1997, said the death penalty has turned the tables on fear and put it back in the hearts of criminals. Within just 1 year, the death penalty helped produce a dramatic drop in violent crimes. The death penalty also proposes a new strategy in solving crimes besides just stopping them. It creates leverage to get confessions out of suspects. When a 12-year-old girl disappeared, Pierce County prosecutor Gary Horn, believing time was running out to find her alive, promised not to seek the death penalty against the suspect, Chirapan Adahan, if he told detectives where she was. Adahan agreed, leading them to her body in East Pierce County. My adversary's last claim was that the California's death row policy takes a lot of time, and that causes many convicts to die of other causes while on death row. While this is true, non-death sentence cases also take a lot of time too, because if the defendant does not like the outcome of his or her trial, they can try for appeal after appeal, since they have nothing to lose. As said by Donald R. Kristin, Ph.D., a late professor of Scientology at the University of California, Santa Barbara, it is not cheaper to keep a criminal confined because most of the time he will appeal just as much, causing as many causes as a convict under the death sentence. Being alive and having nothing better to do, he will spend his time in prison conceiving of ever-new habeas corpus petitions. It has also been found that each year, the combined number of defendants sentenced by jury in Arkansas, Kentucky, Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas, and Virginia significantly exceeds the number of defendants sentenced by juries for capital crimes nationally. Even if some capital crimes are long, it is nothing compared to how many non-capital crimes are circulating in the nation. To summarize, the cost to send people to death row could potentially be the same as people in life imprisonment if the multiple levels of appeal are pursued in an ethical and fiscal responsible manner. Also, the entities for capital case are almost the same for non-capital cases. There isn't a huge difference if the number of appeals for both cases are about the same. If they are, then there are more jobs for people in California. Secondly, the death penalty creates another form of crime deterrent, a new strategy for solving crimes. One can be helpful in the prevention of crime, and the other can be used as leverage to help solve crime. Lastly, non-capital trials can be just as long as death sentence trials. Both trials will have an unhappy defendant if proven guilty, and considering their temperament, they can go through appeal after appeal if they desire. As a result of my claims, the death penalty has the potential to benefit the state of California.
All right, the claim and the structure are laid out pretty well. On the individual points, you're signposting them clearly. The first argument, you make this suggestion that they're potentially equivalent in cost. You've kind of got this conditional argument based on, the way the appeals process would work, and you cite a source on that. I think that that's pretty effective. I think you need a little bit more information on this point because you're relying very much on that one piece of information to advance that counterclaim. There's not really any analysis of whether or not the advocate's correct on the cost issues that they've presented, and so you're kind of putting all your eggs in one basket on that argument. On the second point, you make a deterrent argument. You've got a general statement about deterrence from Governor Pataki, and that's about as far as it goes. There's not really an active defense of deterrence there on that point that would require more evidence, and there's no response to the advocate's evidence on those particular points. Your counterclaim on leverage, I think, is a good point, and you've got a good illustration on that point. The idea that would assist prosecutors or the police in making investigations of crime, I think that's a pretty good idea. And you might also point out there's no way to estimate the costs of savings or the potential life advantages of having such a tool of leverage, so it's hard to measure costs that the advocate's talking about if we don't have any way of measuring these particular costs. So I think that could tie it into the other two arguments if you did that as well. Your counterclaim on the last point sounds like it's very dependent on the same kind of issue that you're talking about on the first point about the endless appeals and the ways in which people can pursue these things. The basic idea here seems to be that life imprisonment is not going to be an alternative that's going to be appealed less frequently, is going to have less court time devoted to it, is going to deal with fewer criminals. In fact, it's going to have the same kinds of costs that you're dealing with, and I think that you had a pretty good explanation of that point. The summary of your argument needs to be a little bit stronger. There was one issue that you presented. There was a piece of evidence where you're talking about the convictions in several states. You mentioned 4 or 5 states, and I couldn't tell what inference you were trying to... I couldn't tell what inference you were trying to draw on that point, so I thought that was a little bit confusing. The summary goes on for a little while.